A very good morning to you all. Today we'll be learning about dental amalgam. Dental amalgam alloy consists of two words, amalgam and alloy. So what is an alloy? An alloy is a union of two or more metals, whereas amalgam is an alloy of mercury with any other metal. Thus, dental amalgam is an alloy of mercury with silver, tin and varying amounts of copper, zinc and other minor constituents. It has been used more than any other restorative material in dentistry. Now coming to the composition, amalgam alloy consists of approximately silver minimum 40%, tin 32% maximum, copper 30% maximum, zinc 2% maximum and traces of indium or palladium. Silver amalgam is supplied to the dentist as a powder or metallic pellets that are then mixed together with liquid mercury in a high-speed triturator to form a plastic mass that can then be placed into a prepared cavity. The classification: Number 1, it is based on the shape of the particles, irregular, spherical or spheroidal. What is irregular? In this, the shape of the particles is irregular, which may be in the shape of spindles or shavings. In spherical, the shape of the particles is spherical with smooth surface, whereas in spheroidal, the shape of the particle is spheroidal with irregular surface. Now, based on the copper content, they can be either low copper or high copper. In low copper alloy, copper is in the range of 2 to 6%, whereas in high copper, copper is in the range of 6 to 30%. Now, based on the zinc content, either zinc containing alloys or zinc free alloys. In zinc containing alloys, the zinc is in the range of 0.01 to 1%, and in zinc free alloys, zinc is in the range of less than 0.01%. Now, based on the presence of alloyed metals, there can be binary alloys containing two metals like silver and tin, or ternary alloys which contain three metals, silver, tin and copper, quaternary alloys that can contain four metals like silver, tin, copper and zinc. Out of all these, the quaternary alloys are the most acceptable. Now, based on whether alloy is unmixed or admixed, a single composition or unicomposition alloy. That means each particle of the alloy has same chemical composition. Whether the alloy is admixed, here they are physical blends of different different chemical composition of alloys. For example, lathe cut and spherical particles. Now, third is based on the presence or absence of noble metals. Like noble metal alloys that contain small amount of gold or platinum, non-noble metal alloys that don't contain noble metals. Now, coming to the effects of the constituent metals on the properties of amalgam. Firstly, silver. It has these effects on the properties of amalgam. Number 1, increases strength. Silver increases setting expansion. It reduces setting time. It resists tarnish and corrosion, and it decreases flow. Now, what does tin do? It helps in the formation of a silver tin compound. This is the gamma phase. The silver tin compound is known as the gamma phase, which readily undergoes an amalgamation reaction with mercury. The effects of tin are: it increases setting time, retards the reaction, reduces strength, hardness and setting expansion. The copper has following effects on the properties of amalgam. It reduces tarnish and corrosion, it reduces creep, and it has strengthening effect on the set amalgam. The zinc, coming to the zinc, its presence is not essential. It can vary from 0 to 2% by weight, and it has the following effects on the properties of amalgam. Number 1, it scavenges the available oxygen to impede oxidization of silver, tin or copper during alloy ingot manufacture. And if zinc containing alloys are contaminated with moisture, then zinc gives rise to delayed or secondary expansion. Now what does palladium do? It improves the corrosion resistance and the mechanical properties. Whereas indium decreases the evaporation of mercury and the amount of mercury required to wet the alloy particles. So palladium is 0 to 1% by weight, whereas indium is 0 to 4% by weight. Coming to the setting reaction. After mixing amalgam alloy with mercury, the alloy particles get dissolved in the mercury. This mercury reacts with the alloy particles to form two products. Number 1, the silver mercury phase, and number 2, the tin mercury phase. After this reaction, the unreacted particles are embedded in the matrix of the reaction products with mercury. Thus, a set amalgam reveals three distinct phases: gamma, which is the unreacted phase, gamma 1, which is the silver mercury phase, and gamma 2, which is the tin mercury phase. The gamma phase, which consists of unreacted silver and tin, is the major component of the unreacted alloy and is also present in the set amalgam. It is suspended in a matrix of gamma 1, which is the reaction product of silver and mercury. The gamma phase is very strong and corrosion resistant, whereas the gamma 1 phase is less strong and is more corrosion susceptible. The gamma 2 phase, which is the reaction product of tin and mercury, or you can say it is the tin mercury phase, is also suspended in the gamma 1 matrix. This one is the weakest and most corrosion susceptible of the three phases. So the major difference between conventional and high copper amalgam is the near elimination of the gamma 2 phase in the high copper amalgams. Elimination of this phase will produce a much stronger and a clinically superior restoration. The reaction for conventional amalgam can be written as follows: gamma plus mercury leads to gamma plus gamma 1 plus gamma 2, whereas the reaction for high copper amalgam is gamma plus copper plus mercury, gamma plus gamma 1 plus copper tin phase. These are the phases of the silver amalgam. Gamma is silver tin phase, gamma 1 is silver mercury phase, gamma 2 is tin mercury phase, and copper tin phase, the final phase which forms is the eta phase, which is known as the copper tin phase, which is more corrosion resistant and stronger than the gamma 2 phase. Here you can also see a diagram of the structure of set amalgam, which shows unreacted alloy particles which are surrounded by a matrix of reaction products. You can see the residual alloy particles which are embedded into the matrix of the mercury reaction products. Now this table shows difference between high copper and low copper alloys. As you can see, copper content is high in the high copper alloys, whereas copper content is low in low copper alloys. Mercury required for amalgamation is less, whereas in high copper alloys, whereas in low copper alloys the mercury required for amalgamation is more. High copper alloys is fast setting, whereas low copper is slow setting. Amalgamation speed and energy. For high copper, it requires high speed and energy since copper has low solubility in mercury. Whereas for low copper, less speed is required and low energy is required for amalgamation. The dominant phase in high copper alloy is the eta phase, whereas in low copper alloys it is gamma 1 phase. Coming to the tarnish and corrosion, In high copper alloys, it is due to copper rich phase, whereas low copper alloys, it is due to gamma 2 phase. That means the high copper alloys is less susceptible to tarnish and corrosion. It is very less in high copper alloys, whereas low copper alloy is much more susceptible to tarnish and corrosion than high copper alloys. Therefore, high copper alloy is preferable in comparison to low copper alloy because of its susceptibility to tarnish and corrosion. And high copper alloy also they give less creep, whereas low copper alloys show more creep. High copper alloy compressive strength is high, whereas low copper has less low compressive strength. Dimensional change is also less in high copper alloy, whereas in low copper alloy it is more. Now coming to the indications. Amalgam is indicated in class 1 preparation, class 2 preparation, class 5 preparation, in which aesthetic is not a problem and the preparation is entirely on the root surface. Class 6 preparation, in which amalgam is used to restore cusp tips. Class 3 preparation, where in cases where isolation is difficult, and tooth having fractured cusps are restored with the help of the amalgam using pin and slot. Amalgam restoration is also done in post-endodontic cases. Coming to the contraindications. Aesthetics. Use of amalgam is avoided in aesthetic areas. Therefore, in class 3, class 4 and class 5, amalgam is usually not indicated except in certain cases. Small to moderate class 1 and class 2 preparations should be restored with composite rather than amalgam, as the former will result in more conservative tooth preparation. In grossly decayed teeth, amalgam is not indicated. Why? Because it does not reinforce the remaining tooth structure. In such cases, restoration should be done using cast restoration. Now coming to the steps of amalgam restoration. Firstly, mercury alloy ratio. Mercury alloy ratio must be according to the type of the alloy used. The preferred ratio of alloy mercury for best results is 1:1. Lathe cut amalgam alloy require more of mercury to wet than spherical alloys. That means lathe cut will require 45% of mercury and spherical alloy will require 40% of mercury. If the mercury content is more than the required amount, the resultant mix will be weaker. If the mercury is less, it may not sufficiently wet the alloy particles. Presently, capsules with proportioned amounts of alloy and mercury are made available. Here you can see these capsules are in the form of silver alloy capsules that can be used for trituration in an amalgamator. Now coming to the trituration. What is trituration? Purpose of trituration is to remove oxide layer from the alloy particles so as to coat each alloy particle with mercury, resulting in a homogeneous mass for condensation. Trituration can be done either by hand or mechanical means. Mechanical method is done with the help of automatic amalgamator and hand method is done with the help of mortar and pestle. Here you can see mortar pestle which is used for hand trituration, and this is the amalgamator which is used for mechanical trituration. Now what is the test for trituration? How do we know that the trituration is ideal? In normal trituration, it should show a good shiny mix. It should be convenient to handle and the mix is plastic in consistency and it is a homogeneous mass which adheres together. Whereas in over trituration, the mix is warm. The mix sticks to the capsule which is difficult to remove. The mix is shiny, wet and soft. Now under trituration, if the mix is under triturated, it will give a dry and crumbly mix that is very weak. it will show low tensile and compressive strength values, and there will be increase in creep. Coming to the mulling. What is mulling? Mulling is done so that all the alloy particles are properly coated with mercury. In other words, we can say that mulling is a continuation of trituration. Mulling of the amalgam can be done either manually or mechanically. By hand, it can be done by squeezing the freshly mixed amalgam which is collected in the chamois skin. Mulling should not be done by bare hands, as it can cause contamination through moisture. Mechanical mulling is done in amalgamator by triturating it for 1 or 2 seconds. Now, application of matrix band. This step is done in case one or more walls of the tooth are missing. For example, in class 1 cavity with extension, or class 2 cavity, or even class 5 cavities. Toffelmayer matrix retainer is used for securing a matrix band to the tooth. Place the matrix band in matrix retainer and pass it between the contact points. After that, tighten the band and stabilize it using wedges. The band should not be over tightened, as this will flex the cusps, resulting in post-restoration sensitivity and failure of the restoration. This is a representation of the placement of band and wedge. Now, coming to the insertion of amalgam. An amalgam carrier is used to carry amalgam alloy into the preparation. First increment of amalgam is placed into the deepest proximal part of the preparation, and it is condensed with the flat surface of condenser. After that, next increment is added and condensed. When the level of amalgam reaches preparation margins, the packing of the preparation is continued to allow an access to build up for better finishing. So, overfilling must be done, and after that, condensation of the amalgam is done using different shapes and sizes of condensers. Working end of the condenser is serrated. Condensation is started within 3 minutes of trituration. Adequate force must be applied for condensation while having a constant supply of amalgam. Condensation must be done laterally as well as apically within the cavity preparation, along with a continuous force. Here you can see that the working end of the condenser is serrated. Now, coming to the burnishing. Burnishing is the process of rubbing off amalgam surface to make it shiny. Pre-carve burnishing is done after condensation when amalgam is overfilled. It is burnished immediately with heavy strokes to improve marginal adaptability of the restoration, number 1, and to remove excess mercury from overpacked amalgam, number 2. So, these 2 points are important. This is the reason because of which the burnishing is done, pre-carve burnishing is done. Pre-carve burnishing improves marginal adaptation and it removes excess mercury from the amalgam. Here you can see pre-carve burnishing is being done with the help of a burnisher with heavy strokes. Now, coming to the carving. Carving is anatomic sculpturing of amalgam restoration. It is done to produce anatomic contours and functional occlusion for the restoration. Amalgam must not be carved until it is sufficiently firm. So, for adequate carving, it is preferable to overpack the preparation or overfill the preparation and then carve it to the margins. The carving instruments must have discoid and cloyd blade design. Larger instrument is used first, followed by smaller instrument. In proximal tooth preparation, carving of the cervical margins should begin following the removal of the matrix band. The band is loosened and then the wedge is removed before carving, because axial and cervical margins become accessible after removal of band. Here you can see the type of carver used for carving, and how the axial margins are trimmed towards the gingiva with the help of sharp carvers. Now after that, checking of the occlusion and contact points is done after carving. The integrity of the contact points using dental floss is checked by passing it buccally, palatally and gingivally. The checking of the occlusion is done after carving to remove any areas left high in the final restoration. The patient is asked to close the mouth so that the teeth meet lightly, and an articulating paper is used to localize any high spots. If the restoration is high, it will indicate premature contacts which are carefully removed. Carving is done until the teeth are in their pre-restoration occlusion. Now this finished preparation is burnished, and finally the restoration is smoothened with the help of a cotton pledget. Now after carving also burnishing is done, which is known as post-carve burnishing. It is done with the help of small sized burnishers using light strokes. So pre-carve burnishing we use large size burnisher with heavy strokes, and in post-carve burnishing we use small size burnisher with light strokes. To improve, post-carve burnishing is done to improve the smoothness with shiny appearance. It helps in reducing the surface roughness produced by carving. In high copper amalgam restoration, post-carve burnishing has no significant effect on clinical performance, but in low copper amalgam, post-carve burnishing will produce denser amalgam at the margins. So post-carve burnishing is done for maintaining the marginal integrity, for smoothing the restoration, and giving a good marginal seal to the restoration. Now coming to the finishing and polishing. Finishing of the amalgam involves removal of the marginal irregularities, defining anatomical contours and smoothing the surface roughness of the restoration. Polishing is done to achieve a smooth, shiny luster on the surface. Finishing is done before polishing by using abrasive agents which are coarse enough to remove bulk from the surface. Polishing requires mildly abrasive materials for producing smooth and shiny surface. Finishing and polishing must be done after 24 hours of placement of amalgam restoration. This is because premature finishing and polishing will interfere with crystalline structure of hardening amalgam, resulting in the weakening of the restoration. Polishing may not be essential for restoration with high copper alloy because they have a tendency of self-polishing and they are already less susceptible to tarnish and corrosion. This is the schematic representation of final polishing of the amalgam restoration using abrasive stones. Now this topic of dental amalgam finishes here.